Thank you, Ricardo. Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute privilege to be here at Innovation Zero. We are two of the co-founders at Rare Earth Global. Obviously, my name is Jamie. We have Sunit.
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
And it's been an awesome couple of days already, walking around, seeing all the different innovations that are hopefully getting us towards achieving net zero. I think I'd like to start just by asking actually a question, maybe having a bit of audience participation. Could you raise your hand if you were here yesterday and this is actually your second day at this conference? Okay, so probably over half of you. So I asked that not because I'm purely interested in understanding who the real dedicated decarbonization heroes are, but more so because you've probably had a chance to walk the hall and now have a good understanding of really what's happening at the cutting edge of combating climate change. So out of those people who raise their hands, how many of you actually feel that we are on track to achieve net zero with what's happening and going on out there? Anyone else? Just one person? Fine. Okay. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I'd like to begin by saying that, the concepts of net zero, and this is something I read about the other day, it's come a very long way in a relatively short amount of time, from science to policy to mainstream in under 10 years. But let's be clear, it's the next 3 decades, principally the first, that is going to be the most important in determining the outcome of all of our efforts. So this is actually a quote from a report I read just a few months ago from an Accenture report, which is broad strokes, of course, but I think gives an indication as to how far behind we possibly are, because there simply aren't enough solutions available. So with, the impact of increasing carbon emissions on our environments, on our health, on our economies, and certainly, rising greenhouse gas emissions that have led to increased global warming and occurrences of extreme weather conditions. I think to combat this crisis, it's quite clear that we need innovative, bold solutions that are going to be available today. So with that in mind, we'd like to use this opportunity to introduce the sustainable solution that we feel has tremendous potential in combating climate change. Sunit, if you wouldn't mind. So it was about 5 years ago that Sunit and I and the rest of the Rare Earth team became aware of industrial hemp. And I'll go into sort of some of the qualities that really stood out for us shortly, but we began sort of unpacking the value from this crop and trying to leverage its benefits by focusing our research and initiatives on 3 core areas. Those areas are carbon sequestration, innovative product development, and finally, how to roll this solution out quickly and scale it across a range of sectors. I think I've just got the mic right. Across a range of sectors and jurisdictions. As quickly as possible. And that was by leveraging technology and specifically artificial intelligence. So hemp, which is, by the way, the crop that we see here today. How many of you, raise your hand if you're familiar with industrial hemp? Has anyone come across it previously? Okay. I think a lot of people are probably more familiar with its notorious cousin, the other family member, who has got a very sort of well-known reputation. Hemp, in my mind, if you're going to characterize it, is more of the sort of industrious and serious or, member of the family. Always outdoors, always on the front foot, looking to make an impact. So hemp as a crop, to our minds, it's often misunderstood, certainly underestimated, but it has some incredible qualities that I'd like to talk about. There are 2 in particular that I'd like to draw your attention to. The very first is its versatility as a crop. You see, this is a plant that can grow very well across a broad range of areas and environments. So we can grow this crop at subarctic temperate and tropical regions at altitudes from sea level all the way to above 3,000 meters, where you'll find it growing wild in the Himalayas, for example. Furthermore, it has a very short cultivation cycle of just 3 to 4 months, requires minimal water, minimal fertilizers, zero pesticides and other nasties, and to boot is also antimicrobial and antifungal. What's really impressive is that it grows to 3-4 meters in 3 to 4 months, outperforming all other plants and certainly weeds. And we've actually grown it in the UK for the last several years, at times with zero inputs, and it's still performed well. And bear in mind that last year was actually the worst drought we ever had on records in the UK, and we still got probably about 15 to 20% below what we were expecting, but that's still pretty impressive for any crop in last year's climate. So in summary, it's a very low input and high output crop. And one other thing to cite is that the farmers we grow with across Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, East Anglia and Scotland have even seen increases in the yields of their follow-on crops, sometimes minimal of about 5%, but sometimes as high as 20%. And what I'm talking about here is usually winter cereals, wheat and the like. The second quality that is really outstanding with regards to this crop is that it has a higher carbon sequestration rate, which is carbon dioxide removal effectively, than any other crop that you can plant, probably save for bamboo. So it's up to 8 times better at removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than trees when measured against the same area and the same time frame, for example. The other point to mention is that below ground, it has tremendous capacity to sequester carbon as well. In order to justify it growing 3 meters in 3 months, it's got a low taproot system that will go as far down as 3 meters in loose soils. And what that does is it encourages the growth of mycorrhizals, which directly correlate to soil organic carbon. And to give you guys an indication as to why I'm even talking about that, soil organic carbon is certainly one of our most promising routes towards achieving net zero. There is the potential to store up to 2,500 tons of carbon within the Earth's soils, which is about 3 times the amount that currently exists within our atmosphere, 4 times the amount that exists within all organic matter. So I think, moving on to the next slide, please. What if I told you that we could actually replace hundreds of thousands of tons of products imported into the UK and Europe today with locally produced hemp alternatives? I'm not talking about fad products. I'm talking about replacing things like soy protein, cement, and fossil fuels. You see, hemp is the renewable alternative with which we can actually have the materials to build our homes, to build our businesses with. We can also power those homes. We can use it for transport fuels. And furthermore, it contains a very nourishing seed which we can sustain ourselves with. I guess as a final point from me quickly before I hand over to Suneet, as a co-benefit of producing these products in the UK, and this sort of ties into the carbon sequestration potential I was outlining earlier, we have the opportunity, and this also, by the way, when I say we, I mean our partners as well as our customers who buy these products, have the opportunity to be involved in generating high-quality carbon credits. So and that's primarily at the moment to do with the above ground biomass, which we store permanently as a residual within our hempcrete materials. But in certainly in the next 24 months, we will have undertaken the LCAs to begin looking at the below ground biomass, which we can certainly include once it's combined with regenerative agriculture.
So how did we get here? We've talked about how hemp is a great plant. But as Jamie said, we started our journey around 5 years ago. So what happened 5 years ago was the US Farm Bill was updated and it legalized hemp into a mainstream commodity. It managed to separate it from being lumped in with marijuana, which has happened over the last 60 years. As hemp has no THC or CBD it kind of created a gold rush. And as you see here, these are some of the tallest plants in the world grown from hemp, about twice the height of a normal human being, but practically speaking, there's not the infrastructure to process it that exists. But what we saw was that as the legalization happened and there were certain regulations around split between THC, CBD, so THC is the psychoactive element of marijuana, CBD, which is used in medical grade products and you can buy as a food product as well that makes you calm, and actually industrial hemp that has very negligible amounts of both. The start of the green rush was based on CBD. So there are about 3 or 4 companies in Canada and North America that ended up IPOing, and they were creating products, so using the CBD oil at the top of the plant for epilepsy medicine. What happened with the rest of the plant was that it was being burnt. There was no infrastructure in place, and you had one of the best plants in the world traditionally used for paper. So canvas came from the word cannabis, and it was made out of industrial hemp. Traditionally, hemp was used for ropes and for textiles. So, for example, we worked with the South Korean government. They, even when they made cannabis illegal, they never stopped growing hemp locally. They used it for textiles. Okay. And some are closed. But as I said, we started about 5 years ago on the industrial hemp plant and saying, well, the product exists. It's just starting to become mainstream. Why hasn't it worked? So we found the same. Our first project was actually in St. Lucia, Barbados. This is one of the CBD brands we created, and we were consulting for the government. And we made our mission to tackle actual burning of the plant and the wider use that hemp can. And as Jamie mentioned, it could be used as a substitute for kind of concrete insulation, which is carbon negative. Marks and Spencer's most sustainable building in the UK is built out of that. University of Bradford's most sustainable building as well is built out of that. And our hempcrete expert has worked on both of those projects. There are about 400 houses in the UK built out of hempcrete that most people don't know about. The other thing we found out was that BMW have been using hemp as a biocomposite in a car door panel for the last 10 years as well. So it was a niche product. Okay, so we ended up going around the world trying to figure out why the industry hadn't taken off. I might end up speeding up a bit because we have a few minutes. And we ended up focusing on one product we wanted to solve ourselves. So there's around 7.5 million tons of soy protein harvested and exported from Brazil each year, which leads to deforestation in the Amazon. And that, most of it actually ends up in Scotland and Norway being fed to salmon. And so we said, well, can we actually replace soy protein with a hemp protein from the seed at the top? And so we got grant funding, we ran initial trials, we were nominated for an award, and we're developing a patented protein. We ended up working for that for about 2 weeks in Machrihanish up in Scotland, where we created a feed. And now we're running an 18-month trial to prove that it could be work commercially. And once we have that patented product, we said we wanted zero waste. So we're not the first company to develop hempcrete, but from the stalk that would be left over, you can build a very, very sustainable building. So we ended up looking at saying, how can we scale this and subsidize each product? If we're using a protein and we're using the stalk, you've got your fixed cost, very minimal additional processing costs to turn into separate products, and then it becomes a commodity that you can actually trade. And so what were the challenges we faced? We're basically trying to compete against commodities that have economies of scale and been developed over 30, 50, 100 years. And so we worked on trying to optimize supply chain optimization. We have experts across all different areas who specifically specialize in trying to improve that. And then we were recently accepted on Bridge AI, a UK government-funded program with some of the leading data and AI companies in the world, to develop the data model. To put it in context, the hemp plant has been out of mainstream circulation for the last 60 years. If you wanted to grow potatoes, there's been about 50 years of optimization around that. And we're going to be using data and AI to basically accelerate that into 2 to 4 years worth of growth. So you can accurately predict the product, grow it anywhere in the world locally to the buyer, and then sell some of the products we showed you today. As Jamie mentioned, it can be grown anywhere in the world. And so the model we're developing will allow that. So we grow as close to buyers as we can. We work with local manufacturers to introduce a new material into their supply chain. And we look to adapt machinery that already exists. So there doesn't need to be a huge infrastructure investment. This is just a mock-up of what we're building. So we've gone through the stage with buyers. We've got letters of intent for over £1 billion worth of product. We've got manufacturing partners across the world who are willing to initially partner with us and then actually invest into machinery. We have farming partners around the world and work with a group that have 200,000 hectares in the UK. And so we're now trying to systemize it, because if you're looking at this and you look at it, it's a franchise model. Basically, per location, you need an operating book to be able to do that. But it needs to be customized per location, per buyer. And we're looking to digitize that and roll it out to customers. As I say, we're on stand C30. We haven't covered some of the other stuff that we can do with the stalk, which include plastics. So you get more sustainable plastic. And the future of the product is, as we scale the commodity, there's been some testing to create an electric battery out of hemp. Cambridge have done 5 years of testing and developed a wind turbine blade out of hemp. And you start talking about biofuels. So as a company, we focused on one product, the protein, make sure there's zero waste. So we use the stalk for construction. And then we work with partners to scale the supply of it, and then hopefully set up a basis for the hemp industry to become mainstream.
Thank you very much for your attention. We haven't left any time for Q&A, but do find us at C30. Thank you.
Thank you.